The finance minister has announced as a part of a countrywide fiscal package that RECPFC will lend about 90,000 crores to bleeding state electricity boards. This will in turn be paid to the generators to clear their dues, and the central electricity generators, of course, will give some rebate against the payment as well. Is this the much needed move that was necessary to be done? Is this transformational, or does this do something that was anyways anticipated and necessary? Let's put and what the impact of this and future things could be. Let's put those questions across to Mr. Praveer Sinha, because Tata Power 2 is one of the beneficiaries of this as well. Mr. Sinha, good having you. Thanks so much for joining in. I know you're in a silent period, so you can't give me numerical answers about Tata Power, so we won't get into that. But just a brief view on how do you rate this move? It was necessary, yes. Is this sufficient, or would you have anticipated some more things to be done?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show. First of all, when we look at yesterday's announcement, there are two basic things that we look from the power sector. The first is the support that is being provided to MSMEs, and this is both for manufacturing and services. So what does that mean? It means that they will be able to get money without any collateral or without any guarantee, and that will help their liquidity. In last 2 months, many of these MSMEs not operate, and in that situation, they cannot also pay their electricity bill to the discom, and that was one of the reasons that the liquidity for most of the discom was very tough. And with they now being in a position to get this money, they will pay to them. It also means that the demand, which had come down by 5% last 1.5 months, that will also go up, because once the
Mr. Sinha,
yeah.
Mr. Sinha, if I can, sorry, if I can just interrupt, I'm losing your voice a bit. Maybe we should just try and reconnect this line, but viewers will stay live with this while my team just tries and fixes that in a minute and a half. I'm sure all the viewers are already aware of the moves, but I'll just lay it out for you as to what's happened. So 90,000 odd crores of infusion, which is positive. There's a waiver of fixed charges, which is not off the table. Remember the Powers Ministry tweet, and particularly for companies like NTPC, etc., which have corrected today. It's important, this piece of news. And we'll, of course, remember, we'll try and connect with Praveer Sinha once he's back online. My team will tell me that. But while we just wait for that for a minute, remember, the Power Ministry a tweet from the Power Ministry points out to a fixed charge waiver as well, because the rebate should have meant that ROE cut discussions for NTPC during the lockdown dying down. But this tweet on the 13th of May, that is yesterday evening, has indicated waiver of fixed charges for the lockdown period. That is from 24th March 2020 to 17th May, as things stand, as we understand, 17th May, which is 6.5 weeks. And the complete waiver of the fixed charges impacts NTPC's ROEs by about 9%. And therefore, that's why I think because the market might be believing that this is interference of sorts, and therefore that is being viewed as a negative. The key is, though, for a sector which was starved of cash flows and dues, which were not coming in from the state electricity boards, probably this was the biggest shot in the arm. And I think the difference, or the question that we'll try to ask Mr. Sinha is the questions that we'll try to ask Mr. Sinha rather are towards whether these moves are sufficient in nature, or do they solve only a cash flow issue? But Mr. Sinha, sorry, we kind of lost you because the voice was very patchy. Can you tell us, you were talking about how the announcements yesterday had two big things. One was for the MSME and the other one for the power space.
Yeah, so I was mentioning that from the announcement yesterday, there are two things which directly impact the power sector. The first is the loan that will be given to the MSMEs without any guarantee or without any collateral. That will help the MSMEs to pay the electricity bill, which they have not been able to pay for last 2 months. And to that extent, the liquidity of the discoms will improve, and their ability to pay GenCos and other service providers will improve. The second is that MSMEs can quickly come back and start producing before what they were doing before COVID. And that also will increase the demand, because in last 1.5 months, the demand has gone down by nearly 25%. And there is a necessity that the demand goes up, and I think that will also happen. Now, coming to the 90,000 crores that will be given directly to the discoms, this is a small step which has been taken by Government of India, apart from the very many other initiatives that they have taken as a part of the distribution reform. This will help to pay immediately the GenCos and the Transcos who have not been paid for last few months and have further got aggravated in last 1.5 months as the discom collection had gone down. The generating companies have to pay in advance for the coal, have to pay in advance to the railways for freight movement, and it's very important that they have enough liquidity with them so that they continue to pay for these services and operate their plant. And this will go a large way, and it will go to support the generating companies and also the transmission companies. This will also support the distribution companies because the loan is supposed to come at a much lower rate of interest than what they normally arrange for. This, of course, has to be backed by the state government guarantee. There are certain other conditionalities which have been imposed in terms of the distribution reforms that needs to be done to bring down the AT&C losses, to improve the metering and billing solutions, use digital technology for the bill collection, smart metering and prepaid metering. So I think in the overall scheme of things, Government of India is supporting the discoms to move towards using some of the technology interventions, some of the technology solutions, and thereby, in the long run, improve their efficiency and make them commercially viable.
Mr. Sinha, I don't want to get into what it means for Tata Power, but surely, is it possible for you, are you in a position bound by the silent period laws to at least tell us what kind of money is coming to you as a result of this? Can you say that?
I won't be able to comment anything on that, but I would like to only tell you that this is a support to all the generating companies. Many of them do not have that sort of a problem because they are in merit order and they were getting, but nonetheless, the distribution companies were having huge liquidity crisis in spite of the fact that they wanted to make the payment, they were struggling with that. This will give them some respite in terms of their ability to pay immediately. The arrangement is that the money will be used exclusively for making payments to the generating companies and transmission companies. It will go directly from PFDREC to them. And though the agreement will be with the state discom. So I think it improves the liquidity to a very, very large extent and will help the power sector to come back online, which it was struggling to for last minute.
Would you expect something else, Mr. Sinha, as well? I mean, I know a lot of sectors are struggling and one shot has been given, which is a large one for power, but it's such an important sector. And that's what I'm wondering. Would you expect something else in the days, in the weeks to come in terms of a support, stimulus / package?
I think the Government of India is also planning a huge support program, which of course is linked with the Electricity Act amendment and the distribution reforms that needs to happen in the states, tariff division. The draft Electricity Act has been circulated by Government of India, and that brings out very, very important aspects that how in distribution there would be sub-licensing and franchisee, direct benefit transfer would be there. Power supply will be only made if the LCs are opened. So a whole lot of reforms have been suggested in the Electricity Act amendment. Similarly, whole amount of reforms are suggested in the tariff policy, which is now with the group of ministers for finalization. So I think we need to look at it in totality, that these are the steps that the government is taking to incentivize the state governments and the state discoms to bring about the power sector. And I think this is a big step in that direction.
Sure. Just one follow-up before I move on from this topic and ask you one more question on some other topic. For a couple of your peers, Mr. Sinha, this waiver of ROE in fixed charges for NTPC, Power Grid, etc. I think the market has taken it a bit negatively because that reeks of some bit of interference, even though it's one time, and maybe it sets a precedent. What do you think of that move? Any thoughts there?
I think it is not the ROE which has been reduced, only that the power which gets surrendered because of the low demand, to that extent, the waiver is being given. So the ROE for the supply of power continues to be what is approved by the regulator and it as per the regulations and policy. It's only for the quantum of energy some of the states might have surrendered during the period of less demand. To that extent, it will be restricted. So I think it's a very, very small amount and it is no way impacting the existing PPA arrangement or regulations that are in there.
Okay, just one final question, Mr. Sinha, and that is on something that was done earlier, which is the MERC tariff approvals. And prima facie, I think it showed about a 19.4% reduction. At least the math that we had done then seemed to be suggesting that. Any thoughts on that at all? And one last question would be on how do you expect post-lockdown, and we don't quite know what lockdown 4.0 could look like, what could happen to demand?
Let me try to address the last question first. Post-lockdown, we will definitely see increase in consumption going up. We have already seen in last 2 weeks, the consumption patterns have increased. Of course, with summer, the consumption in any case increases, but with whatever industries have opened up in last 2 weeks, we do find that there has been uptick in consumption going up. Secondly, as far as the tariff that was decided by MERC, the tariff is a cumulative impact of all the power purchases and all the other expenditure that one incurs on the network. There is a truing up process that takes place, and the true up process that took place this year brought about certain aspects about the network cost and the power procurement cost. So the regulator, as and when those aspects are brought to their notice, they true up and they give a forward-looking tariff which is based on the revenue requirement of the discount. So I think these are very, very balanced orders. There's huge amount of application of mind and consultation process with consumers, and it is always done in such a way that it balances out the actual cost that is incurred for procuring power and supplying to the consumer, and to that extent, and also ensuring that the regulated rate of return is motors. So that is the way the whole power tariff is fixed, and it is actually a balancing that has been done, and it's good for the consumers and the industry.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Mr. Sinha, thank you so much for taking the time out and have a good quarterly performance. We'll probably try and talk to you once your quarterly numbers are out as well, sir. Thanks so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you very much.
And viewers, thanks for tuning into this broadcast.